All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conservatish episode 182. My name is Peter Feliciano, and you are watching this wonderful show with my wonderful face and my guest's wonderful face, unless you're listening to this outside of YouTube. Anyway, wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share, make sure you rate it, make sure you review it, make sure you, and if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the bell, the subscribe, and then hit the bell, because otherwise you won't hear everything that I put out. I've got music coming up soon. I've got a cover of a couple of 90s covers, 80s covers, and with some great musicians. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube as well. You can find my music everywhere as well, just a self-titled album, Peter Feliciano. And by the way, you can now buy merch. Yay! Peter Feliciano and Conservatish merch. Go to peterfeliciano.com and hit shop. I've got sandals, I've got shirts, I've got all kinds of wonderful shit. Yeah, so there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, our wonderful guest today is Adam B. Coleman. Yay. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, first things first, do you mind if I cuss? Because I forgot to ask you. All right.
Listen, if you don't cuss, I'll be offended.
Good. So please tell everybody about your book and about where they can find you and subscribe to you and all that stuff, please.
Sure. So my book is called Black Victim to Black Victor. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on barnesandnoble.com. And you can also buy signed copies. Currently, they're a little bit on back order, but you can place an order on the website. If you go to www.blackvictimtovictor.com, it'll bring you right to the page, and you can place a purchase right there. As far as social media, you can find me on Facebook. If you look up facebook.com/Coleman Writes, or you just do a general search for Adam B. Coleman, you should find me. There's a lot of Adam Colemans out there, but there's only one B, as far as I'm aware. On Twitter, I tweet under wrong_speak. And also on Gab, same thing, wrong_speak. And MeWe, you can look for the Wrong Speak group. You're open to join. We have some nice conversations in there. So I try to be on not just the big platforms, but also the free speech platforms. But that's basically it. I'm all over the place.
Awesome. So yeah, I got your book, and I'm a good chunk through it, and yes. I just like write what I. So sometimes like you'll start reading something and like it'll you gotta kind of slog through a little bit, but like right out the gate you were just hit, and I was just like, yeah, get it. that first I think the preface where you're like, how you're asking all these questions that not only do not get asked, but also are taboo to ask. And it was just like, it even opened, because I like to think of myself as a very well-informed, you know what I mean? Like I know everything, I know what questions aren't being asked, but like you threw in some good hits in there, and I'm like, God damn, perfect. So what is in general about your book? What got you to want to write it? What is it about?
So what got me to write it, actually, I've been wanting to write a book for a few years. I kind of went on like a personal venture where I was developing myself and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I kind of talk about that a little bit in the book, but I wanted to improve on my legacy. And part of my legacy is my son, and I wanted to leave something behind for him, something that he could be proud of from his father. And I thought a book would be a sufficient thing to leave for him. But for a while, I had no idea what I wanted to write about. I was always fascinated with questions and questioning things. And so that's why I led off with that chapter, the introduction, asking all of those questions, because I think the questions are pertinent. But what really got me going was George Floyd. When George Floyd occurred, funny enough, when I saw the initial video, I was like, wow, that's a shame. But I didn't think it would turn into what it turned into. I didn't think that'd be this huge movement based off of that. And what I saw it manifest into was something that was completely unhealthy. I'm watching Black people on the streets, almost like having panic attacks, who are in complete fear for their lives. And in one way, you can understand it's a rational feeling, but in another way, it's irrational. It's rational if you believe the narrative, but It's irrational if you know what the truth is. And, I'm no professor or scientist or anything special. I got Google just like anybody else. And when you start looking up this information, you start realizing, like, man, my people are so misinformed and so misled, and someone is profiting off of their pain. And that was the beginning part of why I actually started to write. And I knew generally what I wanted to write about. But it probably wasn't until halfway through the process where I knew exactly what the book was going to be. And that's what you're reading now. Funny enough, in November, actually maybe end of November, I had actually erased everything I wrote from before, because the direction I was going and my voice had changed. And in the beginning, I was frustrated. And if you were to read it, you would see how angry I was. And as time went on, I became more passive and compassionate and empathetic. And I felt like that was the portrayal that I wanted to put off. I didn't want to be the angry Black guy who was chastising Black people. I wanted to be empathetic, but I want people to be aware as to what was going on in the world, and the narrative that was being spread is not one that's true. It's provably false. So that's kind of the process that led me to the direction that I ultimately went into. On top of me wanting to leave a legacy behind, I wanted to use my life story as an example. And I wanted to use it as an example so people can understand. I've seen other books where they're so hard with facts and they look and sound like professors. And it sounds all right, you get the gist, you're like, it's okay book, but it doesn't touch you. And people forget the message. You can forget that book a week later. I wanted to write something that was personable. Even though I'm Black, I wanted to write it for anybody. It could be white, Hispanic, whatever. And you understand from a human perspective what it's like to fail and overcome, what it's like to feel victimized and move past that victimization. And I wanted to talk about family, because who can't relate to family? Whether you have family issues or you have family trauma, I wanted to talk about those very specific things: family, God, morality, principles. And I wanted to have it more of a personal level when it came to this book, that you will come away with saying, you know what? I'm glad he laid out all those facts, but I felt him write this. And that's what I was more so going for. So that's why I erased everything I wrote before that, before November, because it didn't have what I wanted it. And once my voice started to change, it felt so much better. It felt natural. And it felt like, oh man, I got to keep writing, but you know what? Screw it. I'll just erase everything, because what you're reading now is exactly what I wanted. And I'm very proud of how it came out.
Yeah, I'm really loving it. And to that point, I think that one of the things in the sphere of having uncomfortable conversations, the CNN debate, 5-second, or even online, it's really too easy for all of us to get into this mode where we get sound bites, where we get facts, where we get whatever, and we don't throw in the personal. You made yourself vulnerable in the book. And that's actually that's some strength, this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's some strength. And that's coming from a place of reading this book and being like, okay, I love the facts. And they're like, okay, who's a good example? Thomas Sowell, right? Thomas Sowell is one of my favorites, right? But some of the words he uses, it's difficult to read because he's just so fucking smart. And it's just I have to reread five times. But he doesn't really necessarily go into his backstory, into his personal journey, into his vulnerability. And that's not to say that his words or his books are less powerful, but there is something powerful about yours, because you're speaking from the experience of somebody who talks about the break in masculinity, right? Who talks about growing up in a fatherless home, right? Who talks about being homeless multiple times in your childhood. That's some vulnerable shit. You know what I mean? Because it's too easy for me when I'm getting ready to debate somebody to just have this cock of the walk strut where I can't be questioned. I've never had problems. And laying yourself open to attack is almost more powerful than like what can they do? What can they do? You know what I mean? It's actually
Right.
really powerful.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to own it. You know, I have no shame about being homeless. And just to, because I don't think I really get too deep into being homeless. You know, we were homeless twice when we were kids, and I was homeless once as an adult.
Mhm.
And if you were to ask me, would I change any of that? I would say no,
Mhm.
because all of those things, you know, when you lose everything, you have nothing, you become fearless. Like I'm living well right now. I'm not check to check. I'm doing relatively fine. And if something was to happen and I had to sacrifice everything, my fiance's not going to like hearing this, but you know, I feel I am strong enough to handle that. And I'm not worried about that because as long as I have myself and I believe in myself and I believe I can overcome whatever obstacle comes in front of me, that's all that matters to me. And, you know, being true to myself has been extremely important. Being principled in how I feel has been extremely important. And I wanted that message to come through in this book because I feel that far too many people they're so afraid of sacrificing. And because they're afraid of sacrificing, they're just willing to not be principled in their feelings. You know, so many people grow up in a particular way, but they get swayed all over the place. And like right now, we have cancel culture, and everybody's so afraid to speak their mind, or even not even speak their mind. Let's say you're just some passive person who's apolitical, but you hear something that's going on around you, and you stay silent to it, and you don't speak up because you don't want to rock the boat. Because if that boat rocks, you fall off and you get wet and you can't swim. So what are you going to do? Are you going to stay quiet and let the boat keep going, or are you going to risk drowning?
And that's the
You
difference
know,
between,
and
right. And that's the difference between you and I believe with me is that I can't really be fucked with. You know what I mean? Like not only are you in the position of being financially fine, like cancel me, motherfucker. Like I'm good. You know what I mean? Like you're not holding, you're not, as Patrice O'Neill used to put, you haven't given me golden handcuffs. Golden handcuffs are, okay, we'll give you the
right,
give you the deal, we'll give you the this, we'll give you the that, but you have to say what we want, you have to stay silent when we want, you have to whatever. So number one, cancel me, and number two, to the analogy that you used, if I rock the boat, I can't swim. You have already learned how to swim without a boat. I've already learned how to swim
right,
without a boat. You know, like there's nothing they can do worse than whatever I've gone through before. You know.
right, right. And fear, you know, fear is one of those big motivating factors. Whether we're talking about race, whether we're talking about politics, fear is a very strong and powerful force. And you know, I just don't want to live fearful. I think that's the best way of putting it. You know, last year when the coronavirus took place, you know, I got into some clashes with some friends of mine. Um, and I'm relatively like I like having cordial conversations. I try to have my personal beliefs and my personal feelings, and my feelings may change depending on the facts. You know, if you present me with information, I'm more than willing to be wrong. But you know, there were a couple situations where friends of mine, people that I've helped out, you know, I've attended holidays with them, and I say one comment, and it's like they forget all intention. And so I kind of feel like they want me to fear losing them as friends. They want me to fear the repercussion if I do speak up and I say something against the orthodoxy, then that's it. That's it for them. And I'm not fearful of losing people. I'm not fearful of, you know, keeping my mouth shut to make them feel well. You know, there's only I have a phrase that um, I tell my son. You know, there's only one person who's going to advocate for you, and that's yourself. And so, am I going to lose myself just to keep someone? No, I'm more than willing to move past that. I'm more than willing to move past that person. It was nice while it lasted. I wish you the well. You know, I wish you the best. Good luck to you.
Right.
And that's basically it. You know, there's a story that's in the book where I talk about a friend who was from I won't say the country, but he's from Europe. You know, I did a lot of traveling in the past few years, and I met him when I was in Germany. He's from a different country, and we literally I met up with him 2 more times. We met up in Germany again, and we met up in Amsterdam. And, we were having like a true friendship that was starting to develop. And he was just some stranger at some point, which should be like a nice Hallmark story. But when I told him that actually I don't disagree with Donald Trump, and I think people are being hyperbolic, then it became no. And then he went on, and then I tried to actually save the friendship by saying, well, listen, we don't have to talk politics. I think too many people want to force politics. I don't want to talk politics. Let's have a friendship. Let's have a human relationship. But every time he wanted to go into politics, he felt the need to dictate what I believe, to dictate how I feel. And one of the things that he said to me is, I can't believe that you don't see how racist America is. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't even fucking live here. How are you going to tell me, as someone who is Black, not only, because a lot of people live in one place. I live in, 5 states, right? In multiple towns. I've moved a ton of places. I moved in places, where I went to schools where I was one of 3 Black kids. I've been surrounded by white people most of my life. And you're going to tell me, as someone who's probably made 1 or 2 trips to America, who's never actually lived in America, to tell me that America is this huge racist state and I'm always in danger. And that to me is utterly offensive. And our friendship ended shortly after that, because he was unwilling to move past that. He felt that he had to, and he used the word save. He felt like he needed to save me. He's like, well, this is my last attempt to save you. And I was like, go fuck yourself. And I was done with that.
That's the thing too, God damn it. I'm sick of the people who are non-liberal being on our heels. Fuck that shit.
No.
Like, call it what it is. Listen, giving somebody, like, refusing to move on from political discussion, as passionate as I am, I'm the same way. If people, I know people who are dear friends who disagree with me on politics. I'm wearing the fucking shirt. It's okay if we disagree on politics. I'm not, if people don't want to, okay, great. But pushing and thinking that you have to save, I'm tired of like defending myself. Like, I'm not rude. I'm not racist. I'm not, like, no, you're fucking rude. I have never been in a Starbucks, and maybe this is because I've lived in the Bay Area in New York, at Starbucks, at Uber or whatever. And I've never had someone assume that I'm a Trump supporter, but I have had a lot of rude ass motherfucking liberals, mostly white, assume that I'm liberal and just bring politics into the conversation.
Right.
Isn't it crazy what Trump's doing? Like, what the fuck? Like, we're in a cafe, son. Like, what the fuck are you doing? That's rude. That's rude.
Right.
That's childish. And I honestly, I've met a few. When it comes to the realm of liberals, when it comes to the realm of politics, a lot of people, when you get them alone, get them off of social media, are reasonable. But a lot of people in the liberal sphere, because I believe personally, white supremacy has manifested as liberalness, that now they get to fucking you, and they get to tell me where the fuck, like what was that? I refused to let these people last year, the George Floyd thing. And I've talked about it with a lot of different people. People lost their fucking minds. People lost their minds. I literally saw white people who I know are smart, who I know are kind, say that white people need to shut up. White people don't get to have a say about what they're saying. And so I just grabbed a bunch of Black conservatives and was like, what about them? What about them? What about them? What about them? And they had fucking nothing to say. Nothing to say. Racist, white, liberal piece of shit. You had nothing to fucking say. And you know what? When I share our conversation, they're not going to have a fucking thing to say either. I'm sick of these. And I refuse to let, because that was the tipping point. As soon as you say a whole race of people don't get to do something or need to do something, suck my dick, dude. Fuck you. Right. Sorry. I just needed to rant for a second.
Listen, I feel the same exact way. Maybe not as passionate, but I feel the same exact way. Like one thing that I find interesting, after the situation of George Floyd, I started seeing how toxic Facebook had turned into. I mean, Facebook was already toxic, but it became like a fucking cesspool. And I was like, you know what, let me look for somewhere else, because I know that I cannot express myself on this platform. So I went to other places that were more free speech. However, you run into the gamut as far as the type of people. And let me tell you, I've had cordial conversations with actual white supremacists. That's how amazing. That's how amazing it was. I mean, there's one guy who you know, from all intents and purposes, believes in all the Jewish conspiracies. But I remember one time I was having a conversation with some guy in there, and he was like, "Adam, don't worry about that guy. He's a troll." I was like, "Thanks for looking out." Yeah, this is our dialogue with an actual white supremacist who would probably say, "Yes, I am a white supremacist." But you know, me and him had conversations, and I'm like, I disagree, but I understand where you're coming from, and that's basically it. You know, I don't like your logic, but okay, but we're having a conversation. So at least, because one thing I find hilarious is when you have liberals who say, that's the talking points from the KKK, and I'm thinking to myself, when was the last time you heard from the KKK? Like, there's all this presumptive talking points that say, oh, well, the KKK thinks that. Oh, this is the KKK supports them. And I was like, God, you guys are just reincarnating a boogeyman from the 1940s. Like, like, where are you people coming up with this? The KKK is a bunch of guys who are disorganized, who are somewhere, whoever knows, who burn one cross in their own yard because they know better than that. Like,
and there's like 5 of them. There's like 5 of them, and they're not getting laid. They're boring people. There's you know, what's the point? Why are we scared of them? I don't understand. You know what I mean?
Right. And you're effectively afraid of somebody who is actually not doing anything actionable. And that's the funny thing that I find about it. It'd be one thing if the KKK was riding around and terrorizing people, but they really aren't. It's pretty much a fallacy, and especially for people like where you live at in New York. You know, they're not running into the KKK. They're not running into these type of people. Like, so I just find that the whole rhetoric about white supremacy and, you know, this ideological boogeyman that's just creeping around the corner, that I should be fearful of, that I've never experienced in my life. You know, I think that's all hilarious.
So you've lived in said 5 states, and you've never experienced the KKK. What genuine white racism have you experienced?
So what I can tell you is I remember the first time I was called, can I say it?
Yes, nigger.
Say the word?
Yes, say nigger.
Yes. Okay. All right. I remember the first time I was called a nigger. I actually write about that in the book. And the kid was my neighbor across the street, and I think we were playing basketball or something. And I was like a kid. I was single digits. I can't remember how old that was exactly, but he called me a nigger, and I was confused because I was like, where did that come from? And I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, because I was pretty young. But outside of that, I didn't really feel that different. You know, I had white friends. I pretty much went wherever I wanted to go to. You know, there were places where I went that were more racially mixed, and then there were places where they were more rural, and I was one of the very few. You know, I would say the amount of times that I felt some sort of racial look was probably very seldom, very few. I'll tell you this, the most uncomfortable I've ever felt was when I had a white girlfriend and I was in South Jersey, and we were walking on the boardwalk. Yeah, that's the most uncomfortable. That was the most I felt like people were staring at us. But outside of that, I've always felt fine just generally around people. I think that the vast majority of people, as long as you act in a particular behavior, you know, you act calm, and I'm a relatively calm person, I think people just respect that. Even if they have feelings or like, I'm not sure about black people, you know, you come in there with a different approach, and that's how you change people's mind. Like, okay, maybe I was wrong about this person. But I think when you come in with the presumption that you are an oppressor and I just have to keep my eye on you, oppressor, I think that's a bad faith relationship, and especially with strangers. That's why I always use the example when I talk to people. If you go into a store and the clerk is rude to you, you're like, why is that lady rude to me? And you are Black. It's with the assumption that she's acting that way toward you because you're Black. But we don't know if she had a bad day, if she found out her husband cheated on her, if she's just naturally a bitch. Like, you don't know any of these details, but it's with the expectation that I am supposed to feel this kind of racial paranoia that she is reacting to me, rather than that is just who she is, or there's some other underlying situation that's at hand. So,
and I and I'd also
yeah.
and I'd also add to that too. Sometimes it could be because you're Black, but if she, as a store owner of a little bodega, if she
Mhm.
had seen that most of the thieves or the shoplifters have been Black, is she allowed to use her experience as the teacher? You know what I mean? Like when I would play music in the BART station in San Francisco, I would see a
Mhm.
large percentage of the people who would hop the turnstile, they'd be Black. Not all of them, but a large percentage.
Mhm.
Not only not only was it more than half, I'd say it's like 70%. And maybe that's just because I was paying attention. I don't think so, because I was right fucking next to the turnstile. But like, not only is that higher percentage than what it should be, like 13% of the population, but also in San Francisco, I mean, they even made a movie about it, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Like, it's a lower percentage in San Francisco of Black people to white people or Chinese or whatever. So shouldn't
Right.
experience, isn't that allowed to be the teacher? Just like I don't mind if a Black person, if a Black man has multiple experiences that are bad with a white cop, is he allowed to be a little like look askance? Yes. Is he sure. But there's also a difference too, to bring it into a new thing where there's a difference between lived experience and learned perspective.
Right.
Lived experience is one thing, but learned perspective is another. And to just trust that Black men are saying that I have this experience with cops. Okay, is that because you actually do, or are you skewing your mind to already? It's like when I go into a dating situation, and I'm already like, oh, bitches are this, bitches are that, blah blah blah. Sometimes that's learned experience because women are the worst, but also, but also, but also it can be learned perspective because I've chosen to be defensive toward women, or I've chosen to not trust women because I was hurt, or because I was judgmental, because I'm trying to protect myself from rejection, so I'm going to reject her first. There's all kinds of shit in there. Human psychology is deep, but to say that Black skin equals perfect perception of their experience is horseshit, and that's actually fucking racist.
Yeah, yeah. I think it takes a lot of strength to give a stranger a blank slate. To take someone that you've never met before and to say, you know what, let's say 70% of the people who look just like you act this particular way, or have done this, or have done something against me. It takes a lot of strength to be like, but you know what, let me give you a chance. And I think that there needs to be more of that. There needs to be the ability to be wrong. The ability to say, maybe I'm wrong about you. So until you do something to me, I'm going to give you the chance that maybe you deserve. And that's how I try to approach people. For me to be able to travel across the country, or travel to other countries and meet complete strangers, and be friends with some of them. I still talk to some of them from Germany and France and Spain. You have to approach it from an aspect of, this is a blank slate. How are you doing? My name is Adam. And you have to see people for who they are, what they put out there. And it takes some skill, but I think if we were to bring it back to race, or Black Americans, there's a lot of trauma within our community. And it's very hard to move past that particular trauma, to look at people for who they are, because you're either being told that you're people of trauma. You're being told your whole history is of trauma. And then you're growing up, we got 67, 70% of Black people like myself who grew up in a single parent home who are experiencing neglect, which is a form of trauma. And so you have all of these experiences and you have conflicted family situations already. Maybe you have poverty situations already. So you have all these layers of trauma. And the one thing we don't advocate for is therapy.
Mm.
You know, I've been to therapy multiple times for different things. I went to a therapist for like my real first therapist as an adult that I went to. I went because I was having panic attacks and I was experiencing agoraphobia. And I was, that's when you're afraid to leave the house.
Oh, agoraphobia. Okay. I thought you said something.
Yeah. Yeah, I was experiencing that. I went and I started seeing a therapist about it. And then boom, I'm unlocking all this pain that I was feeling from when I was a kid. And she was nurturing and I was crying and it was exactly what I needed. It was exactly what I needed at that particular point. And then years later, I was having some other issues and I started seeing another therapist. And she was putting her finger at me. I didn't need a shoulder to cry on. She was like, here's what's going on. She was real with me. And that's exactly what I needed. And all these different experiences when it comes to therapy helps you to understand, like, you are not perfect and your perception could easily be wrong. And, you know, the relationships that you're surrounded by could be toxic and you think that's normal, you know, and then what makes it worse is that you grow up and you make babies that look like you and you treat them the same way that you were treated because that's all you know. All you know is trauma and you're just transferring trauma from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And nothing changes. And then what makes it worse is that the community reinforces that this trauma, this type of behavior is normal. And to move beyond that behavior makes you non-Black.
Right.
You know, so if you say, you know what, I'm going to stop the cycle. I'm going to take them out of the hood. I'm going to put them in private schools. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to sacrifice for them. And they go and do that all for your kid to be called an Uncle Tom. All for your kid who might show some level of intelligence to be questioned as suspicious, you know, in regards to their race. And so that type of mindset, if anything, is the type of mindset that white supremacists actually want you to believe. They want you to believe that you're ignorant. They want you to believe that you're incapable. And they say, yes, that's right. You're acting white. You're like, yeah, they are acting white. You know, it's like you guys are actually saying the same damn thing. And that's so infuriating to me, you know? And there is that racial component, that racial constraint when it comes to improving things. And there's a lot of fear about speaking up against that constraint because every time you try to speak up, your Blackness is challenged. You know, if you ask those questions, like how I put in the introduction, you're challenged. You're saying, you know, you're getting the side eye, like, who's this guy? You know, like if you look at someone like Candace Owens, she's more aggressive than I am, but I agree with just about everything that she says. You know, sometimes people react to the approach instead of the message, but it doesn't negate that her message is correct and where she's coming from is true. You know, and I think there's a lot of bad faith that's given if you question the Black orthodoxy, or if you question the Black cult-like thinking that, you know, we are a monolith, we must behave this way, continue to conform to Black thought. Right. Are you really Black? Right. What's your Blackness? Black. It's this constant thinking of who are you? Well, you're Black. Okay, so follow the guidelines of being Black and everything will be fine. And then if you miss a couple of checkpoints, well, then we have to reprimand you. You know? Yeah.
Go ahead, finish up. I'm sorry.
No, that was it.
Here's the other thing I really enjoy about, because I hadn't thought about it from this perspective. You know, the Black women who I've come in contact with, I fucking adore. a lot for the most
Mhm.
part, because I kind of see it as black women are like a walking heart, like all emotion. It's not even on their fucking sleeve. It's just, whatever they feel, they react, whether it be aggressiveness or whether it be, hey babe, it like very like maternal and all that stuff. But just as you've talked about in your book and I've talked about, you do kind of need both masculine and feminine. And so when, in the home,
Right.
especially for the children. So in this position, you talk about the responsibility that Black women have, and you question their queenness and their bossness and their, all this label of fucking that they're infallible, because they're at the moment, unless, I mean, if they're trans, they're like super at the pinnacle of the hierarchy, the victim hierarchy. But Black women can say whatever the fuck they want. You know what I mean? Like Black women can do no wrong, and you take umbrage with that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what Black women do wrong.
All right. Well, it's less about do and it's more about thinking and how they portray themselves. So, and mind you, this is a very sensitive topic because it's like being in a monarchy and questioning the king. You know, right now, Black women, they control the household, they control the money, and they control procreation. They control everything about the family within the community, which is why we call them queens, we call them bosses, and you don't question the mother. The biggest insult is when you insult someone's mother. No one gives a damn about the father. And all of those things, I'm not saying it's purposeful, I'm just saying how it is currently, and actually how it's been for a period of time. And it's extremely difficult for us to criticize our mothers, but it's necessary to criticize our mothers. If we can call out bad fathers, we should be able to call out bad mothers. And we should stop pretending that every woman that pushes out a human being is a perfect angel. There are a lot of people who are flawed. I mean, we're all flawed, but it's what level are we flawed? Well, when someone believes that they're irreproachable, that they have like this delusion of grandeur, like there's black girl magic, like all these phrases, like alone doesn't seem like anything, but this constant bringing up of royalty, like queens and bosses, and all of this kind of sounds like an inferiority complex, you know, like you need to constantly, I am special. No, I am special.
It's like,
then
it's like
these guys,
it's like a guy who's always talking about how much he's getting laid or how big his dick is. It's like, you're hiding something, motherfucker.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's unnecessary. I mean, no one, I feel like this. There are rarely special people, but we have to pretend that people are special. Like I had a conversation with my son. I said, you're special to me, not to everybody else. Like there are rarely special people in this world that are so impactful that they're actually special. But we have to pretend that because you are a mother and because you're in this position as a woman, that you are perfect. And all that does is mask over the imperfections that you're displaying. When our Black women are the most obese, when they're the highest demographic when it experiences diabetes, all of these things are problems. They need to be addressed. But all we do is say, well, our Black women are just big. They got big butts. And we just pretend that how this is normal. I don't know if you listen to Kevin Samuels, but he said something very poignant. He says, go back and look at pictures of your grandma. What does she look like? This idea that women, Black women, are supposed to look this way is only just killing them. They're unhealthy, they're unhappy, they're miserable. And then they're being told, go ahead and just push out a baby. You want a child? Push them out. No repercussions to it. And all it does is put them in a position of burden. And we're delivering a wrong message, and a message that ultimately leaves women alone, bitter, angry, and then all they're doing is transferring that frustration, that pain onto their boys, their girls, to grow up to repeat the same cycle of feeling because they've been told their whole life that they're special, but they're getting unspecial results. You know, they're getting things that are unfavorable to them. But I thought they were supposed to be queens and they could do anything and they're magical. Well, you're getting very unfucking magical results coming from it. You know, when we look at the rate of Black men who are locked up in comparison to their population, when we look at the abortion rate for the young girls who are getting abortion, a third of Black girls or Black women are, a third of Black pregnancies result in abortion, which is extremely troubling when you put that in perspective. And you have to ask yourself, why is that the case? And so that's why I try to make the case that feminism has been part of the Black community, maybe not by name, but the attitude, the actions, and all of these particular motivating factors that lead to the deprivation of Black women and their behavior and their happiness. All of these things, the downtrodden of the family, has a lot to do with feminism, and it splits apart that potential fatherly impact.
Right.
And I think feminism, I think feminism, especially right now, people are very overt when it comes to their political beliefs. Feminism has become top of the line, top of the charts, and everybody's talking about it openly. And so now I just keep watch. Anytime a new movement comes out regarding women, they put Black women first. So the body positivity movement is primarily displayed with Black women. So you can go and look up any type of article where they talk about body positivity. They show Black women. They're the anchor to every social justice cause, every Marxist movement. They're the anchor, and they use them. And that's the part that is very troubling to me, is because they're being used as pawns because they're being pandered to.
Right.
They're saying, don't go on a diet. You're beautiful. You're a big Black woman. You're just sassy. You're just fine. And meanwhile, she's suffering from diabetes and she might lose a leg.
I love that. I'm gonna read your fucking line because it killed me last night. So women are infallible in their minds, so they can't just be perfect mentally, they have to be perfect physically. We call Black women thick, curvy, and big boned as they live their life suffering and dying from preventable health conditions. Feminists tell Black women, don't change who you are, but have no eulogy prepared when our Black women lay dead in an extra large casket. That's a fucking line. Yeah. Man. You have no eulogy prepared when they die at 50 fucking 5. You have no fucking eulogy prepared. And it's beautiful.
Exactly. And I've seen older Black women who are limping. I've seen older Black women who are on oxygen tanks. I've seen older Black women who have to take insulin. You know, these are preventable things that we just say within the Black community, this is normal. Our Black women, they're just big, you know. We make them sound like how like Samoans are. Like, oh, well, Samoans are big. You know, it's like, okay, maybe you have a case, but now like that's how they treat our Black women, and they're not supposed to be that way. And then if you say, hey, there's something wrong, and I'm concerned for your health as a man, I'm concerned for your health as a woman, then it's a problem, because now you're pointing out her imperfection. Meanwhile, you can call me imperfect all day long. You could say I got a dad bod, and you can say whatever you want about me, and that's perfectly fine. I'm up for criticism. But we should be able to criticize in a healthy fashion towards our Black women to help them, not to chastise them. You know, if I'm pointing out like, hey, I'm concerned about your health, that doesn't mean that I'm trying to insult you. That means that I'm concerned for your health. I would
even take it a step further. Like these, sometimes criticism is criticism, and sometimes it's just fucking teasing. Why can't I tease you? It's not phobia. Like some fucking Monty Python documentary, because I just love that shit. And they were talking about someone was talking about like, oh, they're making fun of gays, so that's homophobic. It's like, no. Why can't I make fun of Black women? Why can't I do it? It's teasing. In fact, in the Black community, doing the dozens or hiking or whatever you want to fucking call it, it's the basis of your fucking humor is to call a motherfucker, your shirt's fucked up, or you're this or you're that. I can't tease you. you're not equal to me. I'm not equal to you because you got black skin and some tits.
Right.
Fuck you. Like, I'm allowed to tease you. I'm allowed to make fun of you, and I'm allowed to criticize. You know what I mean? It's not supremacy. In fact, in my fucking shit, as much as I say nigger and make fun of all this, I rag on white motherfuckers more than anybody, white liberals especially. You know what I mean? Like, why can't everybody just be equal in that shit? You know? I also
absolutely.
I also want to bring up also. Let's get into the George Floyd thing because we're ramping up now. I really don't think, I could be wrong, I really don't think it's going to go the way liberals want it to go. The Derek Chauvin trial. I could be wrong, but I really don't think it's, and I've already seen some white bitches go online. Oh, they were sharing it the other day. I saw multiple times. Derek Chauvin is on trial. America is on trial. No, America's not on trial. Derek fucking Chauvin is on trial. Okay. Do you know? And not only that, if you think that the justice system doesn't work, if it doesn't go your fucking prescribed way as some dumb bitch who's never done the fucking research into what happened that day, then fuck you. You're a child. I don't give a fuck. Okay. That's number goddamn one. Number two, even if Derek Chauvin doesn't get found guilty of murder in the first degree, which I don't think he's personally responsible for, mostly because murder implies intent. The dumb piece of shit knew he was being filmed. Why would he intentionally murder somebody on film? Come on. No, even full-on white supremacists don't murder intentionally on film and then go, oh, I don't know why I'm in trouble. Come on. I'll take manslaughter maybe, but even then, I don't think it's going to go their way. But if you think, if this trial, if Derek Chauvin doesn't get found, if Derek Chauvin doesn't go to prison for the rest of his life for murder one, then the justice system doesn't work. Do you think there are 4 murders? Like, do you know how many murderers went to jail, rightfully so, today? Both black and white and Mexican and whoever, although Chinese don't really murder. They murder flow with poisonous fish. But like, do you know how many guilty people went to jail today, rightfully so? And the other thing, I'll even put it, because a lot of these dumb motherfuckers they throw out things because they're stupid. Although I love that. Anyway, let me finish this fucking point because I'm going to go on tangents. But the idea of like, oh, the Atlanta shooter got pulled in. So, mass shooters only get pulled in when they're white. Mass shooters only survive being arrested when they're white. How could it be that every black mass shooter is killed, and yet there are more black people in prison than anybody? Like, aren't the people who are saying that, oh, he survived being arrested because he's white, also the same people that too many black people are in prison? Well, how did those prisoners survive being arrested if every single one, you fucking dumb, sorry. Do you know what I'm saying? So let's prep you and I right now. Let's prep you and I for Derek Chauvin getting found either not guilty for murder, or manslaughter, or guilty for manslaughter. What do you think about this whole thing going on?
Well, let's preface it with this, because someone's going to skip to this point and think that we're advocating for one way or the other. I'm just trying to be objective. So I personally think if they are attempting to go for a murder charge, then it's a losing battle. Because like you said, you have to prove intent. Granted, we're not lawyers, but I'm just going off of the basic information that I'm aware of. So I don't think you can prove intent that he intentionally tried to kill him. Especially when you go and look at the police footage, the body cam footage that was leaked, and he wanted to be placed on the ground and he requested to be held down. So it'd be a little bit of a different story if Derek Chauvin was just some aggressive guy from the beginning. It was roughing him up. Or like it was like the Rodney King situation where they just got him on the ground and kept beating him. Okay, perfectly fine. I can understand that. But when you leave out the body cam footage, then you're leaving out critical details to how it even came to that point where he's on the ground with the knee in his neck. The other part is it was part of.
Let me pause you. I didn't know that he requested to be put on the ground.
Yeah. So the body cam footage. just to explain a little bit, the body cam footage, when you watch it, they show you how when they first met George Floyd, how he was appearing loopy in the first place. He was very, he wasn't making sense. And that's when they arrested him. And he was panicking as they were walking. And they were trying to put him into the back of the car, and he was refusing to get in the back of the car. And he's like 6'5" or something like that. He's a big guy. And so they weren't trying to force him in, they were trying to coerce him in. And they were saying, listen, you get in the back seat, I'll get in there with you. I'll get in there with you. Oh man, I'm claustrophobic. He's freaking out. And so they're saying, listen, get in the back of the car. They're trying to work with them. So the one cop said, I'll sit back here with you. And when you hear those words of compassion to a guy who, I think at that point they had called in the ambulance, because from their experience, they knew that he was overdosing. They knew he was high. They knew something was wrong. They called in the ambulance. That level of compassion shows you, like, I don't know if their intent was to go out and kill a black guy when they're saying, hey, I'll sit next to you if you sit down. But he was refusing to do that. And they got to the point where they had to kind of slide him into the car. And when they were sliding him headfirst into the car, he was freaking out. And he said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Put me on the ground. And that's when they took him out and put him on the ground. So when you leave out that body cam footage, and for months, that footage, it actually was leaked. So we weren't even supposed to see it. And so for months, we're thinking, boom, camera's on. And then he just appeared on this black guy's neck for apparently no reason. All these details are very important to understand. And when you learn all that, you see all that, I find it hard to believe that they can prove that he intended to kill George Floyd when minutes before he was saying, I'll sit next to you to make sure that you're okay.
Right. So
also the other thing is that putting the knee on someone's back to hold them down, because they have a whole procedure for someone who is overdosing. And because they can have I forgot the actual term, but they can shake and they can harm themselves. So the police officers are trained to hold them down so they don't harm themselves. But putting your knee on someone's back can actually cause the type of damage that they're saying that was caused, asphyxiation. So they were told to put the knee on the neck, which you can do to keep them still. Now, did he put too much force? Did he go beyond that? That's all debatable, and I'm not the person to debate that. But the knee on the neck was part of the Minneapolis Police Department's procedures. So he wasn't going outside the lines when it comes to that. But regardless of all these details that I'm bringing up, it doesn't even matter, because this is an emotional trial. And me and you are able to say, one, I'm not related to George Floyd. I don't know this nigga. He never came to my house. Like, why am I so passionate about this complete rarity of a situation of someone who's killed by the hands of police who's unarmed? It's an injustice. Well, guess what? I know factually that this happens to everybody, and it's unfortunate, but it happens. But the good part is that it's extremely rare. Right. And so I'm able to look at this from a very objective point of view without the I am black glasses on, saying, well, they should go to jail anyways because George Floyd was black and he shouldn't have died. No one's saying that the man should have died. No one says that. And we need to look at this from a nuanced perspective. Otherwise, these activists and these people and the opportunists, well, actually the opportunists want him to get acquitted. They can't wait to go back into Target and break into some cash registers. They're all about it. But everybody else, all the innocent black people that live in this community who depend on the bus service, who depend on these stores, who depend on all these businesses, the businesses that didn't leave the last time the riots came, they depend on all these things. They're the ones who are worried, legitimately. And if he gets acquitted, it's almost certain at this point that what happened last year will happen again. And it doesn't sound like the city of Minneapolis has any fucking balls to do anything about it to try and prevent it. because they didn't do it last year. They said, stand down. Don't worry if they burn down the police station. Don't worry if they burn down the residency. Don't worry, just let them have it. You know, Black people are angry. It's okay. Just pacify them. And that type of behavior, that type of viewpoint is only destructive against Black people, against the innocent Black people. You know, I write very specifically in this book about the innocent Black people that die, or the innocent Black people that suffer economically, that suffer morally, because of the people who are taking advantage of them. These activists, I'm willing to bet you anything. Most of these activists out there who put, you know, hashtag activists and their Twitter bios as activists, they are of a middle upper class. They are economically fine. They've never been poor. They've never been like me and you who had to struggle. They've never been in that place, but yet they feel some type of racial kinship and they want to grift off the pain of actual Black people. And they don't give a damn if people go into these neighborhoods and tear it apart. Because we know that most of the time when these riots happen, sure, there might be some people from that neighborhood that are causing it, but we know for a fact that the last time in Minneapolis, most of those people weren't from the state, whether they were Black or white. We know that these people come in and they're opportunists.
Right. I think I'm going to say it real fast and loose. So everybody cover your ears. It's faggoty whites and emotional Blacks. The only people who are going to start rioting are emotional Blacks and faggoty whites. That's the fucking truth. Whites who don't get laid and Blacks who are swept away in emotion. And both of them are playing off of each other. Right. Do not get it fucking twisted, everybody. This is not, Black people feel this way, as you saw from video after video of last year. There's that wonderful one where that Black chick is like, hey, white boy who's spray painting Black Lives Matter or kill all cops or whatever on the McDonald's or the Starbucks. She's like, hey, we live here. You don't live here. Don't ruin our Starbucks because you're angry. Like, stop spray painting on this fucking wall. And there's a Black chick and this skinny little white kid who's had fucking 3 sexual partners in his whole life. Is unfunny, unfuckable, just boring, lame. This fucking square who listens to Rage Against the Machine as if that's been valid since 1996. Fuck Rage Against the Machine, okay? Let's be real. Let's be real. Anyway, sorry. That guy was spray painting. And this Black chick who's like, hey, we live here. There was another one where this Black girl, these white kids were driving around and handing out bricks. This car full of white kids handed a couple of bricks to a Black guy. And this Black girl's like, hey, why are you handing a brick to him? He's the one who's going to get arrested. He's the one who's going to get shot down. He's the one who's going to get, who could have a George Floyd situation. And yet your white ass is driving around in your daddy's car. You know what I mean? Like, this is not, we need to not only tell it like it is, that they're bad intentioned, I think, but also that they're not cool. Like, we need to be real. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and only in a warped world would we think that we're helping Black people by destroying their communities. Like, I have a hard time understanding that. You know, when we can say, man, the hood is messed up, and the hood doesn't have any job opportunities. The hood is crazy. Let's burn it all down. That'll make things better. You know, like, none of it makes any sense.
Let's help the way we. It's also, let's help the way we're seen. The Black people are seen by accosting white people in the streets. How is that gonna work? Now, to bring it back, to circle back to that initial thought. And you put it a very good way. You said, you know, I would, or maybe I'm forgetting the way you put it, but I know you put it in a very smart way. But I put it in this way too. If the diagnosis was correct, I would agree with the medicine, right? I would agree, let's burn this motherfucker down if Black people were being hunted in the streets. But as you point out very well, and everybody go by Black victim to Black victor, as you put really well, the numbers are not fucking there. I thought it was 10. I think you said 12 in all of 2019. It was 12 unarmed Blacks were killed by cops in all of 2019. Out of 41 million Black people in the country, right? And out of 30, I think it's 35 million police and civilian interactions a year. Could be a lot less, could be a lot more. I can't remember. but it's a lot of fucking black civilian civilian to cop interactions. And of those numbers of people who got, I think it was 10 or 12 or whatever, black unarmed who got killed by cops, there were 20 plus, by the way, whites unarmed who got killed by cops in 2019. But of those blacks, 5 of them were attacking the cop first, right? 5 of them were either with a car or naked, just like, hitting them or whatever. And the one that was a misfire, a gun misfired and killed an unarmed black guy. He was tussling with the cop. He was tussling with the cop, and the cop was black. So I love how it never works out. And of the 4, I think of the 4 that the cop wasn't being attacked first, 2 of them got brought up on charges anyway. So that's a really small percentage. There's no hunting in the streets, as big-titted Anne Hathaway put it in front of the UN. Oh, black people are scared to leave their house. They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. Again, I would agree with the medicine if the diagnosis was correct. The diagnosis is incorrect, Anne Hathaway. The diagnosis is incorrect. You know what I mean?
Right. And you're absolutely right. Now, the uncomfortable part to talk about is this. If we go strictly off the numbers, so black people are 13% of the population. About 6% are black males. Now, obviously, not every black male is involved in any crime. So we're specifically talking about an age range, from like 44 to teenage years. So that's about the age range of crime rate. So, and obviously, even within that age range, it's not everybody who's within. So we're talking about a minority of a minority of a minority of black people that are experiencing hyperaggression, criminality, and all of these things are put together, and they're committing half of the crimes.
Right.
So when you put that all into perspective, in a country where 330 million people live, and a minority of a minority of a minority of a minority is committing half of the crimes, that should tell you something is wrong. That should tell you something is off balance. And I get tired of people saying, well, that's a legacy of slavery, or that's a legacy of Jim Crow. But if you actually go and look at the numbers, back in the 1920s, the prison rate was proportionate to the population of black people. And so in a time frame where we have legal racism, where you can lock up black people and put all types of crimes on them, they were still being locked up at the same rate as their actual population. And so that part about it, all of it is just such bullshit. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. When you actually go and look at these details and look at these numbers and the narrative, it's all nonsense. But even beyond that, the biggest part that I'm concerned with is, why is there such hyperaggression? What is being exhibited within this very small population, that this small population is so terroristic against other black people? What is existing there? And a lot of it goes back to what I originally said, trauma. A lot of it goes back to the breaking of the family. Pre-1960s, we had probably the strongest family unit within the country in any demographic. Now we are the worst. It's a complete shift change, and our behavior has gotten worse along with it. The visual of the black father as a disciplinarian, as someone who's an authority figure within the family. Not saying that women can't exhibit some sort of authority, but they have a particular level of respect that is seen that is different. This is more of a traditional mindset, but I have to, just looking at everything and being a father myself, I see it. I see how my son views me. And I'm going to be very male-centric by talking about this, because the violence that's being committed is by males. Let's not confuse it. So we have a set of males that are committing all these violent crimes, and the vast majority of them are without fathers, are from broken homes, are experiencing all different types of trauma. And the core of everything, the real solution, I would say the number one solution, if you want to revive Black Americans economically, if you want to revive them from incarceration, if you want to revive them intellectually, you want to do all these things to restore Black people, you rebuild the family. because that is the original structure. You learn lessons from your parents. You learn to respect authority from your father figure. And your father says you listen to your mother. You know, you have a level of respect for people who are above you. And as a parent, you learn to sacrifice for your child. And I see far too many people who are too selfish to just pop out children and don't care about sacrificing for anybody else. They're so independent that they're not willing to work with a partner. They're willing to procreate, but they're not willing to sacrifice their independence or what they perceive as their independence. You know, I'm a strong, independent woman. I can't sit here and wait on some man. And as soon as he pisses me off, he's out the door. But I'm keeping his kids, and the government will subsidize. And the government will say, you know what? Kids go with the wife, or kids go with the baby mama, or whatever the case may be. And the man has no say. The man has been destroyed within the Black family as far as having any words, any say, you know, even down to if the child is even born. And we don't really think about that. We think that abortion is just a woman's choice, and men are just these robots who don't feel any emotion. You know, like, why would we not feel some sort of loss because you killed our potential child?
Right.
You know, even if I said, you know what, it's your choice, there's still a loss. And I've even seen women who've gone through, who are ardent about going through the process, who regret it, or who say, you know what, I don't regret it, but I don't feel good about doing it. And I get really pissed off about people who are so flippant about it. You know, there was a period in my life where I was pro-choice. I would say, you know what, if that's what you want to do, that's your right, it's legal, go ahead and do it. But even then, I wasn't like, fucking kill babies. Like, and there's certain people who are like that. And, right. And that's so disturbing. That's so disturbing. And they think that because they are so loose about it, that they're so pro-choice. I have to be so pro-choice.
Right.
And all it tells me is that you have no regard for human life.
And I think it's even more on that, because to get psychological with it, those women who are so super like, kill fucking babies, it's the same thing we were talking about when it comes to a guy with a tiny pee-pee. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing where like you're overcompensating. Yeah. You're overcompensating because you know this is fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, you know, right. This is an actual life that you're ending. You know that this is, so right. You're going to compensate for your guilt by being all Lena Dunham. By the way, no one's asking Lena Dunham to get an abortion because no one's having sex with her. Let's be real. No one has sex with that chick. No. Some frumpy broad from New York with privileged ass parents who's constantly going, poor women. No one wants to have sex with that. And even if they do, it's once and bounce on her ass. Now, I also would point to this idea. You find to go a couple more minutes?
Hey, I got time.
Okay. I also want to point to this idea too, because when you bring in the Black victimhood, right, and the idea that
right,
if these social justice warriors, if these leftist liberals, whatever you want to call it, if you have them look at the facts, how are they going to stop? They don't even address the fact that not only are 53% of murders committed by Black men, but is also committed against Black men. They don't say a fucking right. word to all the Black death going on. They don't even acknowledge it. And even if they did acknowledge it, they say it's because of racism. No. I'll bring it a step further. If poverty is an explanation for why they're doing all this gang shit and murder and crime, then why are most poor people not committing it? Why are most poor people not guilty of crimes? Why are most poor people not guilty of gang violence? Why are these poor people not responsible for their actions because the white man, blah, 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 and yet all these other poor people who are not doing crime shit responsible for their decisions? Maybe it's because these victim-y little bitches who are wearing blue and wearing red and blah, blah, yeah, I'll fucking call it like it is. Grow up, bitch. Like, why are these people not responsible for the decisions and yet all these other poor people are? Why are these poor people not doing it? You know what I mean? Like, they never, and the same thing you talk about in the book, The point is personal responsibility. The point is individuality. The point is you need to learn how to, as a man, as a woman, whoever, you need to scrape your knee and struggle and then get to the point where,
Right.
okay, you know what? I've called myself a victim enough. I need to stand up. I need to just take accountability for my decisions. You know, you living are a perfect example. You were homeless multiple times, fatherless, blah, blah, blah. And yet you're doing just fucking fine right now. So why
Right.
are you responsible for your decisions as Adam B. Coleman, and yet all these other motherfuckers are not responsible for their decisions?
Well, to go back to what you were saying, you know, why do they see it that way? And I think I'm just going to be blunt about it. I think there is a certain segment of liberals that see Blacks as criminals. They don't want to say it, but that's what they see.
Right.
So and then they have compassion for the criminal. So they say, oh, well, there's so many Black people that are locked up. I feel so bad for them. Meanwhile, these are the same people that were terrorizing this Black neighborhood. They need to be locked up. They need to be taken away from civil society because they're not acting civilly. And like in New York City, bail reform, how's that going?
Right.
You know, like,
and not only
this
how's that going. Remember last year, there was a huge spike over the course of a year and a half of Jewish hate crimes. I wouldn't even necessarily call it hate crimes, but let's just say, because hate crime implies that they did it because they hate Jews. Maybe, but there was a large spike in attacks, random attacks on Jews in Brooklyn by Black people, and all the people in even the fucking Jews in Brooklyn who were on the news. They never said it's by Black people. They just said, oh, this Jewish hate needs to stop. It must be because of Trump. All these Black motherfuckers aren't doing it. And then there was one where this crazy Black chick assaulted someone Jewish, and then because of bail reform, got out of jail the next fucking day and did it again. Right. And yet all these rich upper West Side fucking Jews are just blind to the fact that they're doing it to themselves. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm reminded of the story that always makes me laugh. The guy who, I think he got locked up 3 times in one day for robbing. Like, that's how bad of a criminal he was. He got caught every time, and they let him out every single time for COVID. You know, it's all these terrible policies that all they do is just hurt other Black people. And so every time liberals want to help Black people, over time, over a period of history, you see that all it does is hurt Black people. It takes away from them, and it robs them of their agency. What freedom is the freedom to fail. And everybody uses Black people as a pet project. I need to save them. I need to help them. They're incapable of doing for themselves. And I don't know necessarily where this all started, but this mindset has now been infected with critical race theory and anti-racist movements, where they feel the necessity to save Black people. So not only do you have liberal whites who are acting this way, but you also have upper middle class Black people who feel this way. They all got doctors next to their name, master's degrees, and they feel that they know. They're the accredited ones. I went to school and I learned how to save Black people. So let me show you how to save Black people. Because these people, these poor people, they're not just economically hurt, but they're mentally ignorant. And so they need us. They need us. And it's a savior complex that is so infuriating. But what's even sadder is that some people fall for it. You know, that being pandered to is so powerful. Yep. And it just makes you feel special. And we have a nation of people that always want to feel special, whether it be Black people or anybody else. And when someone comes to you and panders to you, let's say a hot woman comes up to you like, ooh, Peter, you're so great. You're so wonderful. I mean, that's intoxicating. I know. But then you realize, wait a second, she's reaching into my back pocket to take out my wallet.
Or my front pocket.
You know?
Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, being pandered to is so strong, and Black people are constantly pandered to, whether it be politically, whether it be just generally by the government, like this talk about reparations. You know, that this is just another set of pandering to Black people. If you look at Georgia wants to have laws where they check to make sure you're the person who's actually voting. And the first thing they do is bring up Black people. And somehow Black people are incapable of getting a driver's license or a government ID to show that, hey, I'm Adam Coleman and I'm voting in the state of Georgia and I have residency here. And so it's that level of thinking that Black people are so ignorant, so incapable that they need to be saved from themselves. That if you were to bring this up to someone, they would say, well, no, that's not my intentions, but that's your actions. And I care more about someone's actions than their intentions, because you can smother someone to death even though you're just trying to hug them. And that's what's happening constantly. I look at all these different laws and all these different policies that they want to put into place to help Black people. And every time they do it, all it does is hurt Black people. So if we were to go back to bail reform, we want to help Black people by keeping them out of jail. And they find one or two horror stories of someone who went to prison. What's the Rikers? Someone who went to Rikers and something happened to them. And it's terrible. It's terrible to hear that someone in Rikers had bad experiences because they were sitting on bail. But you reform it to a level that doesn't happen. You don't say, well, just send them back out. That's what the presumption that, oh, well, all these people are innocent and maybe 5% of them are guilty. But even if that was true, that 5% can reoffend. There are dangerous people that exist in this world, and when we pretend that danger doesn't exist, when they pulled the cops off the street in New York City, crime rate went up. But where did it go up at? In the Black community. And so you want to oppress people, you remove the cops. You don't add more cops.
Right.
It might not have been right for them to, was it stop and frisk years ago? That's a violation of someone's civil liberties. But you don't remove all the cops. You stop that policy.
Right.
And they want to mask it in, we're trying to do this to save Black people because the NYPD is killing Black people. It's such a fallacy. You can go through New York City history and find a handful of incidents that are troubling. But like you said, there are millions and millions of incidents, encounters between civilians and police, and Black people, white people, whatever. And those times where their terrible actions or injustices are so few and far between that it is not worth changing policy to hurt everybody else. And that has become the motive of many liberals, many well-intentioned liberals with shining ideas that they want to help people, but in the long run, they make policies that hurt Black people, that put them in danger, and they die from it. When they say you can't have a gun because of gun crime, so the only people who can have guns are the criminals who are going to have guns anyways. So now you have no way of protecting yourself. So all that does is hurt more Black people.
And let's put a nice little bow on it, and we'll end it. Like, who are normally the type of people who value emotion over logic? Generally, who are those type of people? Who are the type of people who value intention over action? Women.
Mm-hmm.
Women. Feminine people. Feminine people are the problem. Women, listen to what I'm saying. Girls, shh, shh, shh. I know, evil, shh, shh, shh. You're the problem. Not even you, or not even valuing emotion is the problem. Because as you talked about, there are times in my life where I have needed the maternal, feminine, it's okay, baby. But sometimes I've needed the dad, pull yourself fucking up, knock it off, wipe your eyes, get the dust off your knee, and let's keep moving. We need both. But if one of them's out of their fucking minds, it's women right now, then men need to step up. It's not feminism that has really caused it. It's dudes being unwilling to be masculine. It's dudes being scared to have uncomfortable conversations. It's dudes being scared to push back and say, no, you're not right. Just because you have a puss, that doesn't make you correct. Just because you have black skin doesn't make you correct. No, let's have this conversation. But women have as Patrice used to put it, there's multiple ways for someone who has less power Someone who has less power, the way
Right.
to get power, it's multiple ways. Because my bicep is bigger than most girls' faces, right? So if I really wanted to have
Right.
power, I could do that. But the way that people who are powerless or feel powerless anyway get power is by coercion, and it's by hostage taking. You know, as Patrice used to say that girls are holding the pussy hostage. You know what I mean? Like, you better do what I want. You better say what I want.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I won't let you have sex with me. It's all that type of coercion shit. And dudes have let go of the strength that we have in our bellies. Girls have their own strength, and trans, whatever. Everybody has their own strengths, but we've let that go partially because of a guilt, and partially because of a not doing our own research, and partially because, as you talked about in the book, guys have let their masculinity slip away. And God damn it, that's the problem. We need men, real ass masculinity. Stand the fuck up, boys. Have a fucking uncomfortable conversation. Take a L. Have an uncomfortable conversation, because not only will you feel more fulfilled, but damn it, the girls that I come in contact with, and I've talked about this on the show multiple times in maybe in different ways, but like, let me just say, I am refreshing to girls because they're not used to it. It's like
Right.
like a shark looking for. Let me not go into the analogy. Let me just say, I'm refreshing because I'm actually willing to kind of push them a little bit, to not be just like this damn squid, to not be like a little. My ex one time made this list of what type of male she's most attracted to. At the top was someone who was capable of murder, who treats her like a princess. In the middle was a guy who was capable of some harm, but also kind of an asshole. And at the bottom was guys who were not capable of any harm and were super nice. And she put in parentheses, like a wet noodle. Stop acting like wet noodles, boys. Okay? You need to be, someone needs to hold the spear. If me and you, if me and a girl are walking through you guys are big on, you leftists are big on evolution, right? Say we're thousands of years ago and we're walking through the forest. You're holding the baby. Somebody needs to hold the baby and kiss the boo-boos, and someone needs to stab the wolf, okay? I'm a fucking wolf stabber, all right? And you can't just, both of us just go, I don't know, girl who's holding the baby. What do you think? You know what I mean? In spite of what Kill Bill has to say, in spite of Miss Captain Marvel or whatever the fuck, you're not strong enough as me. You're not as strong as me. We have different strengths. And guys need to stand the fuck up and be the men that we are.
Right. I think that if I'm to be completely honest, I was that wet noodle for many years.
Right.
And I'm not trying to use this as an excuse, but just being forthcoming. I grew up without my father, and I wasn't surrounded by a lot of men. I had my mother and my sister. And so the expectation that we have all these Black boys who are growing up with these Black mothers who are not surrounded by fathers that maybe their fathers are weak, or maybe their fathers don't care. They're not around. And so they're losing out on that key component of masculinity. And what's happened on top of that, they make it into adulthood and they're told to pander, pamper, treat her like a queen, do all these things for women. But what I had to learn was, because I did all those things. I was the guy who would take you out of the date, and I would buy you flowers, and I would go and I'd treat you great. And you know what happened? They never called me back. And every time. And I'm like, what's wrong? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And it wasn't until I realized, and I started actually researching and understanding masculinity and understanding what it takes. And a lot of it is just confidence. And when you experience anxiety and depression and you doubt yourself, you're not confident in yourself. And you have to be willing to say, not like, pick me up, like I'm great, I'm wonderful. No, because when you're confident, you don't need to do any of that. You just say, I am what I am, and I'm principled in how I feel. And you either respect it or leave. And once I started taking that stand, my life started changing. My life started changing for the better. And now I'm engaged. And she tells me all the time, she's like, God, you're so masculine. And I'm like, wow, this is the first time I'm hearing this.
Yeah.
in my life because I was that wet noodle. But I had to learn that I needed to be principled. I needed to stand up for myself, even against her. There's been times that she might want me to do something and I say no. And we joke around and she says, "You always tell me no." And I'm like, "I'm going to keep telling you no." And but she respects that.
Yeah.
And she respects that. And it's not about know your place. It's not any of that bullshit. It's that she respects my position and I respect her position. I will never force her to do something that she doesn't want to do.
Right.
And is that level of respect and this level of maturity and that level of masculinity that is healthy between us because she's feminine. She loves to cook and clean. She's very organized. And she's that feminine balance within my life that I've been missing in my relationships. And now I'm bringing my son who's into it, and they love each other. It's a nice, happy home. She can't wait to see him when he comes over. So all of these different things. And without that masculinity, I don't know if I would be in the position that I'm in. I don't know if I would have written this book. I don't know if I would have had the guts to sacrifice, to show myself, to show my vulnerabilities to the general public, to strangers who don't even know me, all because I might have been missing that masculinity. And there are so many young Black boys who are missing out on that. And they're being told that their other half isn't nearly as important, that you should thank their mother on Father's Day. All of this type of rhetoric that she can teach you how to be a man. And it's not sexist to say this. No one can teach me how to be a woman. That'd be offensive if I could say that to someone. So it should be offensive the other way around. And that masculinity is key. It's a key thing that's missing in this country. And you look at China, what is China doing? China's trying to teach their boys how to be more masculine because they understand the value in masculinity. And what we've been preaching is what I call like a caricature of masculinity. Masculinity has nothing to do with being hyper anything. Masculinity is balanced. It's controlled. If I'm threatened, I will fight. But if I don't need to fight, I will reason and I will get through it. I am the control factor in the situation. If she's panicking, it does me no good if I panic with her. I need to be the calming voice in the situation. And there's something that's more natural about when we do it as men than it is when women do it. And when I see them display masculinity, they look unhealthy, they look unhappy, and they ultimately don't want to do it. If you really sat down with them and they're vulnerable, they say, "I'm tired of always feeling strong. I'm tired of being a strong Black woman. I'm tired of it." Yes, I know you are. So stop pretending. But it's that narrative that goes around.
Right.
And I think the return to the rebuilding of the family will ultimately rebuild masculinity within the Black family. And that's a key component, because if you're masculine, you don't need to go around running and selling drugs and shooting up people. That hyper aggressive minority that I was talking about, that disappears nearly, because what's the point of that? There's always going to be broken homes, but that level of aggression would start to disappear, because the value of family, the value of God, the value of the representation of God within the home, that's what the Father is. They call God the Father in the heaven. Well, we need to return to have that fatherly representation within the Black home. And if many of Black people call ourselves Christians, but we don't see the value of the Father, then what does that say about us being Christians? So, there's a lot of that I think is just extremely key, and masculinity is extremely important. Masculinity has, dare I say, saved my life, because I was going down the continual, perpetual failure of relationships, failure of depression, failure of all these different things. And finding that strength and masculinity really helped me. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm rarely nervous. I don't have anxiety anymore. This is the first time I'm doing an interview with you. You get a little bit of butterflies, but it's just a conversation. And so it's that level of confidence and that level of surety that I believe in myself that I didn't believe in myself years ago, that needs to return within many, not just Black men. The book is about Black men, but or talking about Black men, but all men, and allowing the feminist movement, all these different movements to tear down men, to make commercials saying that your value is worthless. All it does is hurt everybody in the process, because like you said, the women don't respect those ballless guys, those male feminists who bleach their hair and color it pink and say, I'm with you ladies. And all those guys are predators, by the way. If you're a woman who's watching this, all those guys are predators, and they're just trying to pander to you so they can get you in the corner and try to fill you up and assault you. I mean, that's ultimately what those guys are trying to do. Guys like me and Peter, we want you to respect us, and you will actually want to be with us. And that's the difference. And it's not cockiness. It's just a level of surety about ourselves. And if you don't want us, then that's fine, and we'll move on. And we need that masculinity to return back to the conversation in a healthy way, and not be bastardized by people who, by feminists, by people who don't respect masculinity in the first place. You know, that's my feeling on it.
No, I love it. And I was gonna end it, but I just do want to put in this quick point, because you were talking about running around on the streets and doing gang shit and blah blah blah. And I even put it. I called them bitches earlier. Hi boys.
Yeah.
Now I stand by that, because I have actually volunteered in prisons for a long time, and I know guilty. Everybody I've met, Black, white, Mexican, whatever, they're guilty. But that doesn't mean that I want them to die or think. I mean, some of my I have a really good friend who got out of prison. I want them to fucking change their life around and get out of prison. And I know murderers who I love with all my heart. Now, this experience happened once. We're in there and we're doing this kind of spiritual workshop where we do some writing and we look at resentments and all this bullshit, whatever. And and in both in the Mexican community and the Black community too, but especially in the Mexican community, you never talk poorly about your mom, even if she molested you, beat you, whatever. It's madre is, you know, fucking saint, right? And so I'm talking to the dude and I say, like, let's write down our resentments at our moms, you know what I mean? Because it's, even if you love her to death, she did something in there, and it's whatever. And so this guy comes up, he's a white guy, but he grew up kind of in the Mexican gangs and whatever. So he comes up, he's like, I can't think of any resentments at my mom. I'm like, come on, there's gotta be something. Isn't there even something like small, like she didn't let me borrow $20 once, or she likes my brother a little more than me. There's gotta be some resentment in there at your mom, even a small one. It's not hate, it's just something you're mad at. So he's like, well, I don't know, I don't think so. But I mean, one time she didn't let me get my hair cut. And I'm like, okay, cool, write it down. So he writes it up on the board. She didn't let me get my hair cut. And then he starts talking it out. He starts thinking in just vocalizing his thoughts. And he's like, well, I remember she wouldn't let me get my hair cut. And my hair was curly and all the kids would make fun of me. And the kids would make fun of me, so I started fighting. And then I started fighting, and because I was fighting, I started hanging out with the gangs. And he's like, and all of a sudden he starts kind of tearing up a little bit, and all of a sudden it comes whooshing into his life, like, because of something small and shitty, like my mom wouldn't let me get my hair cut, is part of the reason, not all the reason, but part of the reason I started getting into gang shit. And that's part of the reason why I'm in prison. It's fear. Real ass masculinity is never toxic. Real ass masculinity is not like, I'm the shit. That's boy shit.
Right.
So I'm just putting that out.
In that situation, that guy, was his father in his life?
That I don't know. Probably not.
You don't know. Probably not. And I would say a healthy father would have corrected that, like that.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. There's so many steps before that kid makes it to the streets and starts create violence and become a terrorist.
Right.
You know, the father, like, whoa, I see who you're hanging out with. I know what's going on. None of that. You're like, oh, okay. Right. Boom, that's it. So.
Right. This is great conversation, man. It's really great to finally meet you. And thank you for this book. I'm really enjoying it so far, and I'm gonna keep reading. So one more time, please plug you, plug the book. Where can people find you?
So you can go to www.blackvictim2victor.com. That's TO2. That will bring you to my book page, where you have the option to click the link to go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or you can purchase a signed copy by me, where I personalize it to you along with a positive message. So you can purchase all that through the website. I'm found on all the different social media platforms. Also to add, I'm also the founder and editor of Wrong Speak Publishing. So you can go to wrongspeak.net and you can read all the different articles. Most of the articles written by myself, but other articles are written by just everyday people who want to have more of an intellectual dialogue and to explain themselves, even about topics that are tough to discuss. So you can go to wrongspeak.net and find all that information there. Like I said before, you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Coleman Writes, or just do a search for Adam B. Coleman. MeWe, Gab, Twitter, you can find it under Wrong Speak or Wrong_Speak. And I'm trying to be everywhere, and I'm always reachable. So anybody who wants to contact me, feel free to contact me. If you want to contribute to Wrong Speak, you want to express yourself, and you feel like you're being restrained by big tech,
Nice.
Reach out to me. Hit the contact button on Wrong Speak's website, and let's talk about it.
Nice. Fucking badass. Thank you so much, Adam. Everywhere you're listening right now to Conservatish episode 182, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share, rate, review. And again, I've got more music coming out soon, but I do have my album out, self-titled, Peter Feliciano, on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, everywhere. And also you can buy Conservatish/Peter Feliciano merch, sandals, shirts. I have one that says, eat a dick, liberal Karen. So enjoy that one. And sandals with my face. So everybody go buy some merch and follow and share and like and all that stuff. Again, thank you so much, Adam. And yeah, I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.